Welcome to this explainer. Look, if hearing the word budget instantly makes you think of tedious spreadsheets, restrictive rules, and endless corporate meetings, you are definitely not alone. But today we're going to completely demystify the budgeting process from start to finish. We'll be using some clear, relatable analogies to show you that a budget is actually so much more than just a restrictive financial straitjacket. When it's done right, it's literally the blueprint of an organization's survival and growth, transforming those big, abstract corporate goals into actual day-to-day actions. So, let's get into it.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, the big picture of budgeting. Second, why we need budgets. Third, finding your limiting factor. Fourth, building budgets step by step. Fifth, cash, the ultimate lifeline. And finally, number 6, choosing your budgeting approach. All right, let's get started.
Section 1. The big picture of budgeting. Before we dive into single-line items, we really need to understand how budgeting fits into an organization's overall planning framework. Notice the flow of business strategy here. Right there in the middle, at Step 3, the preparation of the annual budget is acting as a critical bridge. It links Step 2, your big long-term strategic dreams, with Step 4, which is monitoring your actual day-to-day results. Because without this bridge connecting your high-level ideas to ground-level reality, a corporate strategy is really just a wish list, right? If that bridge collapses, your strategy remains just a dream, completely detached from the daily operations of your business.
Before we go any further, let's actually define our terms. What is it? Well, a budget is simply a quantitative statement. Basically, it's the actual numbers on a page for a very specific, defined period of time. This includes your planned revenues, your expenses, assets, liabilities, and of course, your cash flows. And defining that specific time period is absolutely vital. Why? Because saying, we want to increase sales by 10% means absolutely nothing without a deadline. Putting it into, say, a 12-month frame makes the numbers real. It's the destination we're aiming for expressed in cold, hard numbers.
And this visual brilliantly illustrates the distinction between the noun and the verb. If the budget is the document itself, budgeting is the active, roll-up-your-sleeves process of getting there. It's the hard work of taking that grand, high-level corporate plan and converting it into detailed, short-term, actionable steps for every single function and department. So, for example, it means converting a 5-year corporate goal like becoming the market leader into a specific 12-month budget for a highly targeted marketing campaign. It breaks the impossible down into the achievable.
Section 2. Why we need budgets. Let's look at the fundamental reasons why organizations pour so much time and energy into this process.
You might be wondering right about now, if it's really just about converting long-term plans to short-term actions, why do we actually put ourselves through this rigorous and, let's be honest, sometimes super stressful number-crunching exercise every single year?
Well, to answer that, I want you to think of a budget kind of like an orchestra conductor. A budget actually performs 6 vital functions. It forces managers to plan, sure, but crucially, it coordinates activities. Just like a conductor makes sure the strings and the brass are playing the exact same tune, the budget ensures your marketing team isn't spending a fortune to promote a product that production doesn't even have the capacity to build. It communicates the sheet music to all parts of the business, and it powerfully motivates managers. When a budget is set correctly, meaning it's challenging but still attainable, it gives your managers a clear target to hit. It builds a strong sense of ownership. On the flip side, an unrealistic budget demotivates the entire orchestra before the first note is even played. And finally, it allows us to control activities and evaluate performance once the music stops.
Section 3. Finding your limiting factor. Because hey, even the best conductors have constraints. So, here's the thing. Every single business has a principal budget factor. Think of this as your primary bottleneck. Now, it could be sales demand because you can only sell what people actually want to buy, but it could also be production capacity or maybe the availability of key raw materials. This factor has to be identified first because it dictates what every other department can actually do. For instance, if you run a boutique bakery, your limiting factor might not be customer demand, people might literally be lining up around the block, but rather your oven space. If you physically cannot bake more than 500 loaves a day, your sales and purchasing budgets absolutely must be built around that 500 loaf limit.
Section 4. Building budgets step by step. Once we know our limits, we can begin the actual construction of our financial blueprint.
This journey kicks off by communicating policy guidelines to the entire team. Step 2, like we just talked about, is finding that restrictive bottleneck. Once that's locked in, Step 3 is usually setting the sales budget, outlining your intended quantities and prices. And from there, we dive into the initial preparation of all the other functional budgets. It's a total chain reaction. The sales budget tells the production manager how many units to make. Then, that production budget tells purchasing how much material to buy and tells department heads how many labor hours to schedule. But keep in mind, these initial drafts almost always reveal massive conflicts, like marketing wanting a huge ad spend while finance is trying to aggressively cut costs.
Because of those initial conflicts, the whole process moves chronologically through some pretty intense negotiations with superiors to refine those numbers. Next up is coordinating across all those different departments to make sure everyone is completely aligned. Then we hit final acceptance, where the budget becomes the official plan. But remember, the process does not end there. The final, absolutely critical stage is the ongoing review of these budgets throughout the year to see how actual performance stacks up against the plan. A budget isn't just a set-it-and-forget-it document in a drawer somewhere. It's a living tool used to measure variance and literally steer the ship month after month.
Section 5. Cash, the ultimate lifeline. Let's transition to the true lifeblood of any organization.
I am talking about cash. Cash is the absolute basic input needed to operate and the ultimate output you expect from your sales. Think of cash literally as the oxygen of your business. To see why this matters, imagine you just landed a massive, highly profitable contract. Your sales budget looks incredible, but the client has 90-day payment terms, and you need to buy raw materials and pay your staff next week. On paper, you are wildly profitable. In reality, you have a severe cash flow crisis that could halt operations today. If you don't have the literal cash input on hand to pay the bills, operations will simply suffocate.
And that is exactly why we use a cash budget. It acts as your early warning system, visually mapping out the timing and magnitude of your expected cash inflows against your outflows over a specific period. Going back to our scenario, by comparing expected inflows versus outflows on a timeline like this, your financial manager would have spotted that 90-day gap months in advance. Having that foresight allows them to secure a short-term loan or maybe adjust spending long before the business ever runs out of breath.
Section 6. Choosing your budgeting approach. Let's explore how different organizations actually choose to build these budgets based on their own unique environments. All right, organizations generally choose between three main approaches to build out these budgets. First, you've got incremental budgeting. This is where you just take last year's numbers and adjust them for things like inflation or some minor growth. It's super easy, and it maintains current performance, but you're kind of lazily carrying last year's inefficiencies forward without ever questioning them. Second, you have zero-based budgeting. Here, you approach the budget for the first time from absolute zero. You rigorously justify every single cost with a cost-benefit analysis before resources are allocated. It totally eliminates slack, but it's incredibly time-consuming because managers have to justify every single dollar every single year. Lastly, we have rolling budgets. This involves continuously updating your budget by adding a new period as the old one lapses, keeping a constant 12-month outlook. It vastly improves planning in uncertain environments, though frequent revisions can cause a bit of staff confusion since the financial target is basically moving every month.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a crucial question to evaluate your own organization. Think about the processes we've discussed today. Is your budgeting process a dynamic tool that is actively driving your overall strategy forward? Or are you just using an incremental approach, blindly carrying last year's inefficiencies into tomorrow? Take a moment to really reflect on that, because ultimately, how you build your budget dictates the reality of your business. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the vital mechanics of budgeting.